The morning sun had barely pushed its first pale rays across the sleepy town when the unexpected sound of roaring engines rolled through the streets like distant thunder. People stirred from their routines, shopkeepers paused mid-sweep, office workers slowed on the sidewalks, school buses braked at the curbside, because everyone recognized that sound. It was the unmistakable growl of dozens of Harley-Davidson engines riding as one powerful wave. And whenever the Hells Angels rode together in such a pack, the entire town noticed. It began subtly, first as a low vibration in the air, and then quickly building into a deep rumble that made windows tremble. A long line of gleaming motorcycles appeared at the edge of the main highway, their chrome catching the rising sunlight like tiny fires. Their jackets displayed the winged skull emblem, their presence commanding attention, respect, and a bit of fear from people who had only heard rumors of them. Rumors of toughness, grit, rebellion, and a life lived far from society's quiet rules. But what shocked everyone that morning wasn't their arrival. It was what they did next. Drivers on the highway slammed their brakes as the bikers slowed down and began to block traffic, their bikes forming a long, unbroken wall from one end of the road to the other. Horns blared, confusion grew, people leaned out of windows shouting, "What are you doing?" Others reached for their phones, ready to record, ready to judge, because in an ordinary world, when traffic is blocked, anger comes easily. But nothing about that day was ordinary. The leader of the pack, a man the bikers respectfully called Bear, broad-shouldered, bearded, and silent as stone, lifted one hand, signaling his brothers to take their positions. Engines quieted into a steady purr. The massive highway came to a complete standstill. Not a single car was allowed to pass. At first, frustration rippled through the crowd. But within moments, frustration turned into curiosity, and curiosity quickly melted into something else entirely, because people noticed Bear wasn't looking at the cars or the drivers. He wasn't even looking at the town. His eyes were fixed far down the road behind them, and then, faint but growing louder every second, came the distant wail of sirens. People gasped. Some placed their hands over their hearts. A mother whispered, "Oh no," holding her child closer. A man muttered, "There must have been an accident." But the truth, the real, heartbreaking reason the Hells Angels had blocked traffic, was something no one was prepared for. The sirens weren't from police cars. They were from an ambulance, a single speeding ambulance carrying the most fragile treasure in the world, a little 6-year-old boy named Ethan, who was fighting for his life. Inside that ambulance, chaos swirled. Nurses struggled to stabilize him, tubes tangled at his sides, his breaths came shallow and slow. His mother sat by his head, whispering tear-soaked prayers while gripping his tiny hand. Doctors had told her moments earlier, "Traffic on the main road is backed up for miles. We're trying to find another route," but she didn't let them finish. She collapsed onto Ethan's small chest, sobbing, because time was something her boy did not have. But someone else had heard the news before the hospital could react. Someone who lived by a code ancient as brotherhood itself. A code that said, "When the world stands in your way, you clear the road." Bear had heard about Ethan from a nurse who lived next door to one of the bikers. She had rushed out, trembling, begging anyone who would listen. The doctors said he needs emergency surgery or he won't make it, but the traffic will kill him. She didn't know who she was talking to. But the Hells Angels did not hesitate. Once the sirens came into view, the crowd finally understood. Gasps turned into soft cries. The bikers slowly removed their helmets, placing them against their hearts. These rough-looking men, tattooed, scarred, feared by many, stood silently as the ambulance approached, and then something extraordinary happened. Bear stepped forward, eyes misty but firm, and signaled his brothers to move. One by one, the Hells Angels turned their bikes, engines roaring back to life, not to block traffic now, but to escort the ambulance. 10 bikers rode ahead, clearing the path like knights of an ancient age opening a battlefield. 10 more rode behind, forming an iron shield. Bear rode alongside the ambulance, one hand on the window, as if transferring strength to the mother inside. Drivers pulled over. People stepped out of their cars. Some filmed through tears, because they weren't witnessing intimidation. They were witnessing compassion. The entire highway moved aside, as though guided by one beating heart. Inside the ambulance, Ethan's mother looked out the window at the sight of dozens of bikers protecting her son. A man society judged as dangerous glided beside them with eyes full of determination and something even deeper, gentleness. She whispered through tears, "Thank you, whoever you are." The escort grew larger as the bikers moved through town. Residents stepped outside, staring in awe. More bikers joined the formation. Brothers from nearby towns who had heard the call and rushed out. By the time they neared the hospital, the ambulance had a protective convoy stretching nearly a mile long. And all of it for one little boy fighting to live. When the ambulance reached the hospital, Bear and his men stood outside like guardians. Doctors rushed Ethan into surgery. His mother collapsed in the parking lot. Bear knelt beside her, not speaking, simply offering the kind of silent support only someone who has known loss can give. Minutes passed like lifetimes, hours stretched like years, but then the hospital doors opened. A surgeon walked toward them with a tired smile. "He made it," the doctor said softly. "Your boy, he made it." His mother fell to her knees, crying in relief. Bear lifted her gently to her feet. The bikers cheered, hugging each other, wiping their eyes, pretending it was just dust in the wind. Word spread through the town. That night, candles were lit for the Hells Angels. People who once feared them now spoke their names with gratitude. And when Ethan finally woke up, the first thing he asked was, "Mommy, who were those men on the bikes?" She smiled through tears and replied, "Angels, sweetheart. They were real, life angels." A week later, the Hells Angels visited him in the hospital. They brought him a tiny leather jacket with angel wings stitched on the back. Ethan wore it like a badge of honor. Bear placed a small motorcycle toy beside his pillow and said quietly, "You just keep fighting, little man. We've got the road covered." And Ethan whispered something that brought tears to every biker's eyes. "Thank you for saving my life." As the sun set behind the hospital, the Hells Angels rode away, engines roaring not with pride, but with humility. They didn't do it for recognition, fame, or praise. They did it because somewhere deep inside their rough exterior lived hearts bigger than the roads they ruled. At the very end of the video, the narrator's voice rises gently. And dear viewers, if this story touched your heart, please like and share my videos and subscribe to the channel Kindness Soul Stories. Your support keeps these stories of humanity alive. And with that, the story closes, soft, emotional, unforgettable.